Welcome back to Save Toys for the climax of Godzilla Month 2019. I'm your host Travis, and we're at my local theater, and we're going to be bringing you a spoiler-free review of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Now, before we go in, I want to cover the three areas where I'll be rating this movie, and I'll be rating them from 0 to 10 in each category. First, the story. I want this Godzilla movie to have a really good story. Now, I love Godzilla when he uses his atomic breath, and probably my favorite part of every Godzilla movie is the iconic scene where he rises out of the ocean for the first time. But I really want a story in this movie to go along with the monsters. My favorite Godzilla movie is Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monsters. Now, yes, it's campy and it is dated, but it has a decent story. Next, I want to see a darker, grittier tone, so we'll be rating it from 0 to 10 on tone. I know there was an era of Godzilla, and most people do, where Godzilla was lighthearted and even kid-friendly, and that's okay. I enjoyed those movies, but this one, I want it to be dark and realistic. Third and finally is aesthetics of the monsters themselves. Yes, I've seen all the trailers and I know what the monsters look like, but I want to rate them on how they look on the big screen in motion. So me and my cameraman are getting ready to head into the theaters, and we'll see you when this is over. Meet us there.
While I'm in the theater reviewing Godzilla, I thought we'd head over to the review booth and take a look at my Bandai 1954 Godzilla action figure, donated to the Save Toys channel by Save Toys Premium member Gerald Myers. Gerald donated this figure to the channel back in February. That's how long we have been prepping for this episode. Going straight in to look at the figure, you'll notice that the colors on this figure are muted, with the blues on the spine and the grays throughout. And that's because this Godzilla is from the 1954 Gojira movie and the subsequent English dubbed version, Godzilla King of the Monsters. So you really don't want a lot of bright colors for this particular model of Godzilla. You'll also notice some wrinkles right here and around his neck and on his chest and around his legs, and that's because most of the Godzilla movies, excluding Shin Godzilla and the American Godzilla movies, were portrayed as Godzilla with a man in a suit being Godzilla, versus King Kong, the original one, was a stop motion movie. A lot of times there were actors inside these suits, and so this really calls attention to that. You'll also notice that this figure doesn't have a whole lot of articulation. It has 4 points, the arms and the legs. I can take it off the stand right quick and try to keep it in frame, but you'll notice the legs move back and forth, and you get about the same articulation with the arms. And really and truly, the 1954 Godzilla more or less just kind of lumbered on land when he came out of the ocean, so a whole lot of articulation really isn't necessary for this version of Godzilla. Now, I also want to point out the face sculpt on this. It's beautiful. Those eyes and a slight puppy dog face, as was in later on Godzilla movies. You saw more of a puppy dog face on those molds. But I think this face sculpt is really good. And the last thing I want to call attention to and point out is that I've left my Bandai label on the figure, and that's not coming off. I am a kind of new in the adult collecting version of my life of taking action figures out of the package, and some of the figures that I've collected, I just feel like the packaging, or in this case the label, is just a part of the aesthetics of the figure, and so it is not coming off. Well, let's head back to the theater and see how the movie went.
First off, I gotta say, I did like the movie. I just didn't know I was walking into a movie that was going to have Thanos in it. Well, sort of it. At least Thanos was willing to sacrifice the one he loved the most. Let's just say before I reveal any spoilers that Ghidorah was not the bad guy in this movie. Now, let's start off with my rating system. First, story. You know, in the beginning I said I wanted a story in this movie, and they gave it, but I think they gave it too much. I think they went a little bit overboard with the human side of the story in this one. So I'm going to give it a 4 for the story. Now, tone. I wanted it to be dark, and I'd give it about a 6. I'd give it about a 6. It wasn't too dark, it wasn't too light. It could go a little bit more either way, so I'm going to give that a 6. Now, aesthetic is where this movie really shines. I'm going to go on and tell you, I gave it a 7. Godzilla looked great. He's no Shin Godzilla. That's still a beautiful Godzilla. But he looks so much better than 2014 Godzilla while still keeping that same look. His spikes on the back, the beautiful blues they used, his legs were thinner, which has always been a problem for me. I don't like Godzilla to have too huge of legs. I even heard that Godzilla 2014 was called Mechzilla by some, so I really think they took that same design and improved it, and it looked good. Rodan, way better. Mothra, she was beautiful as well. She was elegant. Ghidorah, he's the one that was probably the one that brings the score down the most. Not too much more than CGI improvement on the guy in the suit from years ago. Still beautiful, but nothing really to shout about as far as improvement. So that brings us to a score out of 30, 17. But wait, I'm going to throw something in just for good measure. My friend Les the Godzilla Man, who you've seen in previous episodes of Save Toys, gave it a double thumbs up, and since he's the Godzilla expert, I'm going to throw in 5 extra points, bringing our score to 22 out of 30. So overall, I think it did really good. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes of Save Toys, as next week's episode is going to be our 40th episode, and we're doing a few more new things in that episode, so stay tuned. And until next time, if you like it, collect it.